Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ninth episode of the ArtaCast. We are right back from our Christmas celebrations. We calmed down a bit. Did not play too much Lorcana, to be honest, but there are still some things happening, some tournaments we want to talk about. And the NA Continentals are not too far away. So I think there's still a lot of things going on. Just short in the beginning. I don't want to waste too much time on it, but I want to make a short advertisement for my meta file because I had really put really much effort into my new guide for that 6 green purple. And if you're interested in the deck or even thinking about playing it in a big tournament, I think it's a good thing. You can go to my meta file. I will link the link below. You can either buy the guide for €15, or you get probably would be better for money if you get one time into the big kit. There are different tiers. You can watch it, and there's the Kit Cloud Kicker tier, which costs €15 as well, and there you get the guide for free. So you are 1 month then my supporter, and then you get the guide for free. So but I release there every week a new video, even if there's some insights or just I make many commentary videos for my LCCC matches right now. I think that's also valuable. Just want to shortly mention it because I think if you really want to play green purple, then I think you can take away something from it. So just want to short mention it. Yes. From that on, LD, how was your Christmas? Did you enjoy it? Did you have a nice Christmas? How can I say, nice Christmas evenings? Did you eat that much than me, or?
I don't know if I ate more than you because I didn't see how much you ate, but I only saw the only thing I have to go on really was when we were at the Continentals, and you went pretty hard on that buffet. So I'm going to say no, I didn't eat as much as you because I think you can eat better than me. But I think I ate a lot.
Yeah, but you were all dumb because it was for free, the buffet. So it makes no sense. You have to eat everything, That makes just sense if it's for free. But I give you right there. I ate much there.
I think it's because you have confidence that you feel good, you feel relaxed. You're the green purple goat, and the rest of us felt sick with nerves. So we couldn't eat much. But you were able to. It's a normal day for you, so you think, "Oh, just give me the free food. I'm good." No, I had a really good Christmas. Thank you. Like you say, ate a lot. I just spent it with my family, and now I know every time we record, I feel like I'm somewhere else.
In
a different bad setup with bad lighting and stuff. No, now I'm with my partner's family, and we're spending a few days here, so it's really nice. And I've had a great time. Like you say, I've not played too much Lorcana, but I'm just kind of past few days been getting back in, getting a few more games played, and just getting back into the swing of things after a break.
I'm really worrying that I'm somehow obsessed by this game because I can't get my mind too long from the game. I always have to think about decks and stuff and new cards, and but I guess I'm not the only one. So we are all in this boat.
You're definitely not the only one, because I feel the same way. And the thing that keeps surprising me, I know a lot of our friends, a lot of people that listen as well will relate to this. Lots of people play multiple card games, right? Like TCG players, lots of them don't stick to one game. At the moment, all I play is Lorcana. I play some casual Magic outside of that. But when I see friends that are like, okay, done with Continentals, now time to prepare for the next Pokemon Major, I'm like, how do you ever do that? I think about this game as soon as I wake up, and I can't think about anything else really without like really hard work. So, man, credit to people that can keep multiple games in their head, because I feel like this game just runs my brain.
That's the only thing I can kind of keep in my brain is the Pokemon Pocket TCG, but
Mm.
that's not many brain power using, because it's all just a die roll. A general thing I wanted to say for a long time, but now it's finally time, because I did a lot of coaching the last few weeks, and now also when we talk about that, I just came into my mind when we talk about, should I add this and this, and I get so many questions about, should I add this card or add this card or add this card. If you want to improve, I honestly think it's way better to improve into your game, to try to improve into your gameplay than into your builds. I think the builds are not that important. I mean, they can be important, but it's kind of a little bit of luck based against what matchups you face or something. So there's not objectively said this is the correct build. Or I even think if you see all the great players, look at the best players of your color combination. I don't know, Frank Carsten for Amber Steel, or the Kandu for Amber Steel, or No I'm Not, or Ed for Red Purple. I don't think they say this deck I brought today is the perfect 60, and there's no doubt in that. I think they always say, yeah, I like that more because I think there's much more of that. And then, but if they knew they faced some other decks, they wouldn't. What I want to say is, don't think too much about your builds. Focus more on the gameplay, because in the gameplay there can be many objectively misplays made, I think. And that's just a general thing that I want to say to all my students or to all listeners, because I think that's very important, because I notice we can theorize more on the builds than on the gameplay, because the gameplay is not where we can think much. But often I think I'm just losing my mind if I think too much which cards I can add or not, or something. I often think it's not very. I don't get much out of it. Or how do you see it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I'm really glad you've said it, actually, because it's one of those things that comes around again every single set cycle, which is that you eventually start. It happens at the start of a new set. You obviously start looking for the things that are powerful, but then as the metagame settles, you start looking for, okay, what's the deck that lines up best into this format that we, now that we know the format, is there anything that can just take a sideswipe at it and just randomly steal games? There aren't a huge amount of what I would call deck building wins in Lorcana, which is that you sat down opposite an opponent and the game was essentially won before you played because your deck is super teched against theirs or just has a really good matchup into it. Even the good matchups are losable quite often, right? There are very few straight up deck building wins. And in such a flat metagame as we have now, there are even fewer of them around. So I think you're completely right. It's one of the things we suffer from a little bit because, obviously the game doesn't have an official digital client.
Yeah, that's the problem, yeah.
There's lots of time sat around looking at your cards thinking, right, what am I going to put into this deck that's going to beat what I expect in the field, or what deck could I play that I think lines up well into the field? And you start spending all your effort on these I guess they would be the macro decisions, like the big decisions you're making that go around the game. And then actually the game is decided by the micro decisions you make within the game, right? So it's the different plays you're making each turn and the minute decisions you make that ultimately have a bigger impact on the outcome. As long as you're proficient with the deck. That's why it's quite often, it feels very woolly whenever I say, oh, I like this card or this deck because it just has like good vibes, right? That feels like I'm saying nothing. And I am kind of saying nothing. But what I'm really saying is, it lines up well with how I think about the game. I feel positive about it. It supports the kind of style of play that I enjoy. And that is a good enough reason to play it, because as long as you're comfortable with the list, you're practiced, you feel like you have a deck that's going to align well with the way you think about the game, there's no better place to be. If you're looking for answers in your binder, they're probably not there, right?
Yeah. And it's true what you say. I mean, we're still playing a hobby. Yeah? If it's not fun for us, then we then it makes no sense to play it. So I don't want to play Slam Hirons all the time. That's no.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you are one of the people that finds that fun, that's great. That's
Yeah,
great for
that's
you.
great.
But it's like then fantastic. But it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
And if you're not having fun, it's really, really hard to do well when you're not having fun, right? Which is that when the
Yeah,
pressure's on in a tournament, it's hard to call it fun, but you should still be enjoying the experience.
yeah, I highly how can you say, I have much respect for people that playing any deck, because even with the best players, I mean, when I talk with Moyen or someone, even they, if you say you should be the best player in the world, probably if you are able to play exactly always the deck that beats the meta the best, so it's probably every time another deck. So that should be the best player in the world who is able to do that. But every player is biased, and I think even the best players in the world are biased. I mean, look at the best players in the world. They are all known for a deck, probably, and only one can be right at a given time,
Yeah, right.
probably. So yeah, I think
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Is there any player you can think at a high level and done it with a bunch of different decks, like very different thematically? So I don't mean like just. So I would think potentially of someone like Zach Bivens, who has
yeah, Zach
succeeded with different
Bivens.
decks, but then it tends to be steel core decks, so they have a similar philosophy. But there's nobody that's hopping around massively. Everybody has an identity in the game,
Yeah,
which is cool.
Even Zach Bivens did never play a blue deck, I think.
Mm,
Or red purple even. I don't know if he played ever red purple. Yeah, I mean he he played probably, but not in a big tournament or something. So even he has also some, at least he has some aggro sympathy, you can say. I think Zach Bivens is always playing in kind of aggressive
yeah,
deck, grindy deck probably. So
yeah,
yeah,
totally.
even that is it doesn't mean though that if you have struggles with the deck in the current meta, then you can still it's still valuable to have a decent option to jump to if you really think your deck is in a bad spot. For me, it's always red purple, for example. If I really think
Mm,
green purple is in a bad spot and I don't want to go through much pain, then I have always this red purple is the perfect deck for this, because it's never completely wrong. Probably it's always playable somehow, at least somehow. And always when we thought it is
mm.
dead, it is not dead. So it's kind of my, in the podcast, or where did I say it? Red purple is my. I still don't know how the name is. It's your holiday house, you know. If your main house,
Sure.
if your main
Yep.
house is under construction or something, is broken or something, then you have your house you can go into the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. But it's
Okay.
good for.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say it's good for that deck, like you say, to. It has to be different because obviously if it's exactly the same and your main deck is not good, then your sort of secondary deck that you fall back on is probably also not good. So they have to be different enough, but they have to also support in some ways, which is
Yeah.
why for
Yeah.
most people it tends to borrow a color, right? Which is that for you, you're so comfortable playing with the purple core that the transition from green purple to red purple is not too extreme,
Yeah.
but the decks are different enough that you could
Yeah.
play one in that event. And I would transition to a different green deck. I'd go from green purple to probably green steel or something, and that's what I have done in the past when I've not liked
Yeah.
green
That's
purple.
true. Yeah.
So somewhat supports the experience you've got with your main deck, but is different enough to offer some variety. And like you say, if you've got those two in your pocket, then you're pretty set for life for the most part.
So my suggestion is for everyone, just don't hop around too much with decks, but
Mm,
play two decks. I would say two decks kind of comfortably, and then one of them should always be viable.
yeah,
And
totally.
even if your deck is in a bad spot, it's sometimes you are two steps ahead of the meta, because then people don't take against it, and then you
Yep.
can still win. So maybe it's worth to not mention at all. But I think this is for me a good year to how can you say, to rewatch. How do you say that if you look back on the year
To reflect
to
on.
reflect a good year to reflect on for me, because I felt at some point I felt kind of stupid sometimes in this year because I was crying all the time when I lost in the DLC. But then I think, am I even a competitive player? Because in like 2 of the 4 DLCs I played, Green Purple was considered to be not a good deck, and
Mm.
I still played it. And then I think either I have to go the road like, am I just a Green Purple weird guy that plays it no matter what? And then I can't be disappointed if I don't make it. If I'm okay with that, then it's totally fine. But if I really think I have to be good in every DLC, I mean, I have to be good. You have the highest chance in everything. I thought should maybe be a bit more flexible. I think, and that's something you just have to have in mind when preparing for a tournament. Do you want to be? Because maybe I'm just a green purple guy that plays it all the time, like in World of Warcraft earlier when some people played their twins the same class than their main characters. It was the same weird like me if I play always green purple. Yeah, it's
There are
it's tough.
important lessons. It's difficult, but there are important lessons to take away from that, right? Which is that actually the World of Warcraft class analogy that you bring up there, it's something I've thought about quite a lot, and there are parallels to it, which is, okay, do you spread yourself thin and try to learn multiple disciplines well, or do you go deep on one thing and specialize? The reason that I've thought about it in terms of like other games is because the way that game balance moves tends to be that everything eventually gets its time to shine. If you wait long enough,
Yeah.
good game designers will balance games out. It won't give insane cards to red blue one set and more the next set and more the next set, and one thing is the best forever. Things are somewhat cyclical, and if you go for deep expertise in one thing, you can't expect it to always be good, but you need to stay the course and wait until it is good, right? When it's an approach to balance that some people used to say. They used to call it like, okay, it's my turn with the sword today. There is a sword being passed around the circle, and you wait till it's your turn, then you get to cut everyone up because it's your turn with the sword. Great, and that's somewhat, the for us the timings of the Continentals in Europe were perfect because
Yeah.
we'd spent the year sort of focused it on green purple, and the deck got power spike at the start of this set. People were panicked about it. It got some good inclusions. People felt it was stronger than it had been, which was true. The metagame is mostly adjusted now. It's not above anything else. In fact, it's been a little bit pushed down. But we hit the power spike at the right time. And if you have deep expertise in one deck, you need to just hope that happens for you, right? If you've got to specialize in one thing, you need your power spikes to come at the right time. When it's your turn with the sword, it's good to be the same weekend be like Continentals, right?
Yeah. Except you're that confident and you think you're that good with any deck. You can be that good with any deck, but
Yeah.
probably hard. Yeah, that's cool topic to talk about. I think that's very important because I felt like really just to I felt really stupid because I thought probably some other great players thought, okay, Artabax, you play green purple in a last set in a red blue meta or something. What do you expect or something? And then yeah, they're kind of sometimes true, but maybe you're always biased on your own deck. That's also something because you
Yes.
always think your deck is better than other people think it is. So if I think, oh, I wouldn't play blue steel right now for because of genies, and then some purple steel, some blue steel players think, I play now some. I play some bows or something. Genie's not a problem anymore. And then yeah, and maybe just the conclusion for us both is just different. If you're biased with the deck, you rate it higher probably than anyone else not playing it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so we had a big tournament in Florida. Then I want to shortly go over the deck list. How many? 94 players. I mean, we don't have to talk about all deck lists. What I kind of find of interesting was the Jafar deck. Another Jafar deck that doesn't play the broken card, the broken lamp, but other
Yep.
cool cards. It's interesting that he also plays the Jim Hawkins. Yeah, it's a cool deck.
It's really cool, really different.
The 1-drop Aladdin. Does he shift the Aladdin sometimes?
Yeah, I guess so, because you're discarding your libraries or bios. You can shift that if you want. I'm really not sure which situations you would.
If
Well, I
you
mean,
want
I guess
to,
it's not.
if
If
you
you
have
want to sing straight away,
no,
or you want
I
to.
think if you want to banish an item directly, because when
It's it.
when the Aladdin quest you can banish an item.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
totally. And the problem with this Aladdin, right, is that costing 3, like that looks good, but you actually need to destroy the item on your 3, and that's on the play. You have to be on the play and destroy it on your
yeah,
3rd turn,
yeah.
to be able to get ahead of the Hiram. But for some of these low item count red blue decks, I bet that's really disruptive. If you actually do get under that with a shifted Aladdin and destroy their first item,
I guess it's
that's probably
just.
it. That's
I
probably a
guess
big problem.
I guess the 1-3 is just good. They thought about just 1-3 is a good 1-drop right now in steel heavy
Yep,
meta, and
yep,
the
for sure.
downside is not really there. So even
Yeah,
if they don't shift it very often, it's a 1-3 one drop. So I
yeah,
think it's maybe the case here.
yeah. It's a really
Interesting.
cool deck, and I think again speaks to sort of what we were just talking about, which is like if you've got deep expertise with something, if you know a
Yeah,
archetype, there's only so far that these things can be pushed out. Going into the weekend, I'm sure nobody expected to face Purple Steel Jafar, but you've got if it's in the hands of someone who's really well practiced with it, and they've got some really cool ideas for how to build it in the new set.
a very cool deck, of course. That's very interesting and very unique. That's a shout out to Roger Para. Shout out to you. Nice deck.
Yeah, very cool.
And top 8 with this.
Yeah, really well done.
Yeah. So what do we else have? We have some, I think, not very crazy unique decks. There's one of the Doc Ember Steel lists, but without the location. Only with 8 songs and just characters.
Yeah,
And
no dwarf mine.
no
I
dwarf
thought that was
mine.
interesting too.
Yeah, the Mickey Mouse, the 1-drop Mickey Mouse, some Baloos. A bit more aggressive even than the other. Yeah, I kind of see that. Then our nemesis, the Blurple.
Yeah.
Oof. If I see this list, I'm afraid. Three Hades, 3 Elsa. I don't want to play against this deck. Yeah, this is.
Just before Christmas, I went through a phase of playing some Blurple again with 3 Hades because I wanted to play. I
Yeah.
wanted to play
Okay.
a
Yeah.
purple deck a purple deck that's not red purple, but does have a way of immediately answering a Maui Shark,
Yeah.
which is what your Hades is there to do, and actually Blurple probably does better than any other purple deck.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it performed really well. I think the deck is super viable at the
Yeah.
moment.
I think
You're
Steel Song is
really,
probably still the worst matchup, probably
yeah.
because
So you're
yeah.
if you are going into an environment where you think that all the Amber Steel players have swapped to the Dwarf Mine version, or are very likely to play those aggressive curve out type decks rather than traditional aerial wheel type Amber Steel, then you're probably really confident with Blurple because it's way better into those Dwarf Mine
Yeah,
versions than
I
it is
could see that. Yeah.
traditional. The problem is consistently just that you have no way of preventing a whole new world
Yeah.
early on in the game, and then your opponent two things you can't do: can't stop the whole new world, can't really take wide boards back.
Yeah.
And the traditional Ember still does both those things really well. Just
Yeah.
wheels you and then floods the board, and you're behind forever. But against the curve out versions, your best cards are Crab, Fox, all the other stuff that the other purple
Yeah.
decks have access to, and you have a decent matchup into it. It's not terrible,
I
and your
think so. I
Hades and stuff
mean,
like that helps.
one Elsa probably can If you're in the mid and late game, and one Elsa is often enough probably to win the race, then. So I totally see that.
Yeah, totally. And I think that this is just such a linear deck, isn't it? You can play it in such a linear. You can play it in such an incredibly linear way where it just goes 1 drop, ramp, powerful 4 drop. Okay, I can hardly lose now because I went first. But then also has all of the great reactive tools like I say, Crab and Fox and those sorts of things that just retake boards. So good on the play, good on good on the draw as well. So versatile and good.
Really like the Donald Duck. I think it's an underrated card. It's such a strong card. I think it's the stats are really good, and it's kind of draw a card. Even better than that probably in this deck. Because it's just value. For the I think it's really good. If you turn 4 play a Donald, and then turn 5 you can Hades. That's really strong. I think.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, anything with 3 strength like that is good.
Yeah,
that's the important stat right now. Yeah, the two lore things that are questing for 2 and don't immediately die to a Sisu or get brawled. They're way better than they look. This Donald does a lot more work than it looks like on paper. Yeah, another very cool deck.
And the red purple is interesting also. I thought about this card for a long time now, and she was brave enough to play it, the 1-drop Moana. I think. Yeah, I think this is just a good card. It's just a clock since you turn 1 clock, and everybody has to trade it, or you get 1 lore from turn 1 every turn, and nobody can trade this efficiently. And even with Flynn, it's a cool combo.
Yeah, turns the Flynn's on right away, so your clock is incredibly fast in those games where you do that. Yeah, it's a really interesting card.
What I think is really interesting is that the only 3 brawls. That's something I would never imagine, but works out obviously.
Yeah,
and only 8 1-drops. It's but the rest is kind of basic. Only 2 rabbits is interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you I know a lot of people are only playing 6 combined of genies and rabbits, but it tends to be a 3/3, doesn't it?
Yeah, most of the time, I think.
There are a few decisions here that are just across the board a little more like favoring slightly more aggressive play, right? Like This player probably just likes to establish a clock and close the games out rather than trying to grind out forever, which I think is perfectly valid.
That's absolutely So probably for example, the Moana is very good in the mirror match. I think it's there's no way for them to deal with her very good. I still would like, and I thought about her, and then I watched. I saw the card list on Dreambot, because I would really like to get in 1 or 2 captains to even in the mid or late game get her the effect that you can trade with her. Must not be on turn 2. It can be later. I would really like to have this option, but sadly there are no viable captains. That's the problem.
In red and purple, there's basically nothing, right? There's nothing that you're looking at and thinking that you'd want to play it.
Yeah, that's a bit sad. But other than that, I like the split here for 2 Tremaines, 2 Medusa, 3 B prep, 1 Sisu. That's something I like. And such cards like Elsa catch people off guard very much, I think.
Yeah, very much so.
Nobody thinks about the Elsa. Nobody. No. So I like that. And congrats to Casey. Casey, is this a male name or
I think it could be male or female. Casey.
Casey, okay. So congrats, Casey. Nice deck. What do we want to do? I think we want to just think about the decks that we are thinking are very viable in this moment, and just talk about them, or what changed, or what what changed in the meta game. So if you have a deck in mind, do you have a deck in mind that you think, it's always weird to say this, but that you would say is the best deck right now, or has the best meta spread, or has the highest power spikes and the lowest
Mm.
downsides? Or is this too hard to say?
It's a really, really good question. I think that, in my opinion, the highest power deck at the moment, sort of that has the, if you play the right tools and you play the deck in the right way, I think it should be very hard to beat red blue across a lot of, across a lot of matchups. I think they're tooled really well for not losing to the, in theory you just go under red blue, right? Just go faster. If they're tooled the right way, when they play a couple of human Sisus. Now they play Pirate's Life with their Maui Shark, that sort of thing. They have everything they need to not lose to those lines, while also still being the very best late game deck with the most inevitability and the ability to grind for the longest and draw tons of cards. I do think it's a really, really skill intensive deck, and I think there's a massive variance in the level that you see it played to. But if I had to pick a deck that I consistently feel is right at the very top, it's that. I know a lot of people don't agree. People kind of feel like it's pushed down by a lot of the reach of the purple decks, that sort of thing. Certainly, if you're prepping for North American Continentals, I think you can expect to see a decent amount of it, even though it tends to be perhaps slightly more popular in Europe than America. That should put up pretty high representation. Yeah, it's still my pick for most powerful deck, but I don't think it's like on a tier of its own, or that there's nothing that can beat it. It's, as we kind of saw with this top 8 from the tournament in Florida, it's a reasonably flat metagame. There are at least 6 or 7 decks that are super viable at that level. And I just say, in my opinion, red blue is at the very top, but not to an extent where I would ever jump off my deck to play it, if that makes sense, because I'm a horrible red blue player, and as we've determined, doesn't make sense to jump from what you know unless you think that the thing that you're jumping to is miles and miles above your deck, right?
Yeah. I kind of agree with everything you say. The problem with red blue, because that's why I think it's absolutely kind of super busted in general, is because the meta we are in right now with so many aggro decks should, in general, in other TCGs, a deck like red blue is very bad into such meta games because it's the slowest deck you can imagine. It's the I do nothing 3 turns deck, and in every TCG I played before, a deck like this struggles into a heavy aggro meta, and we have a heavy aggro meta, and still it's good. So it's kind of it's kind of busted because it just does powerful things all the time, and it even wins against very aggressive openings often. I recently got destroyed by a turn 4 shark again, and I think this is so illegal to play. To play turn 4 shark, it's unbelievable. But yeah. So I would agree with you that red blue is probably, for me, if you can say, the best deck in general. It's hard to say, but there's no reason to jump off red blue if you play red blue right now.
No, not at all. No, there's one specific thing I wanted to say about red blue, which is that maybe this was how I was thinking about it the other day. More so than saying it's the most powerful deck, I think it's the deck you just have to think about the most outside of the game. So when you're picking a deck and when you're picking the cards that go in your deck, as we were talking about before, when you're actually making those decisions, in the past we've had cards like Diablo, which is that, okay, right, I can't play a deck if it doesn't have a reasonable answer to Diablo because I'll just lose to it. That kind of effect happens where you must have an answer to a specific card. I think red blue at the moment puts the most pressure on everybody else's deck building because you must have a plan to reasonably outpace it if that's the route you're going down, because you're probably not outgrinding it a lot of the time unless you're really, really proficient. Red purple players can do it, that sort of thing. So you have to think about what you're going to do, how you're going to try and close the game out. You have to think a lot about your spread of threats between things that die to Sisu and things that don't, so that you don't present boards that just immediately get wiped by a big Sisu. You can't just fill your deck up with genies, rabbits, other things that have 2 strength and then just get wiped out by a Sisu, because you'll lose the game that way. You can't.
If Sisu wouldn't exist, the deck wouldn't be viable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but Sisu existing puts this massive decision-making pressure on you, the opponent, even before you go to a tournament, because you just can't overextend into this, right? You can't have a deck that folds to a fast Sisu, because it will happen. And if they do it and wipe your entire board with a Sisu, it's pretty much over, right? Like, that's really, really hard to recover from. So, yeah, mixed threats where you force them to be prepared instead of Sisu, because Sisu will only clean up half of your things. And then you also, in your resources in your hand, you sculpt your hand in such a way where after they be prepared, you can then present another board which also doesn't fully die to Sisu. And having to think about those things, that's kind of how I characterize it, right? It's putting the most pressure on my deck building decisions and I guess overall, I'm thinking about it more than anything else when I'm making decisions like, what do I play? What goes into a deck? And that is probably indicative of it being like, if you're ever having to think more about one deck than another, it's probably a little bit more powerful, right? Like, that is the best evidence I sort of have.
No. That makes complete sense, yeah. It's for me the same. It's just a nightmare for me, and I always wake up in the night and from bad dreams about big Sisu. I hate this card so much. Yeah, but it is like it is.
Sometimes I think that if Sisu didn't exist, I'd be happier, but also Genie would be so ridiculously good. It's the only thing like remotely keeping Genie under control, right? Which is that if that effect wasn't going around.
I still think it's I know red blue players say no, I'm just mad, but I think it's a misprint. She shouldn't have 3 lore. That's too much, I think. That is. She would be good enough if she doesn't have 3 lore. So every card probably in the game that would be still good enough, if it would be a bit less good, then the should in general be nerfed, or shouldn't be less good printed, probably, I think. Because if a card would still be good enough, then why is it better than good enough, you know?
Right.
Yeah, but that's the red blue. I think I have to say Amber Steel next, probably, for me. But I'm not sure which version. I still think the song version is way more consistent, in my opinion, but it's hard to say. Because I'm not an Amber Steel player, I only play against it. I played the dog version a bit now. I bricked a lot, and I'm probably... But I'm honestly not sure if I mulligan always correctly. I mulligan maybe a bit too less conservative, because I tend to play to mulligan very aggressive, because all decks I played in the past, I mulliganed very aggressively because they were very consistent, and then in less consistent decks you probably have to keep more ink or something in your opening hand, or I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's nothing against the deck, and the Candio won this big tournament, so it must be good. And it's really threatening how fast it is often, and it always feels like, but that's just a feeling for me, it's always this last card in my hand does exactly the 20 lore thing, and I have never something left if I win, so it's always this situation where I used everything, answer it, or I have won, and often enough it's enough to win the game. So it's just a feeling that sometimes is not good, but that doesn't mean anything, you know, because in green purple, it's sometimes the same, but sometimes you still have your rabbits in your hand, and then you think, okay, if they deal with it, I can refill my hand or something. But this deck is even faster, way faster, I would say, than green purple.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's just the crazy how fast it is a problem for many decks, I think.
Yeah. But when that's happening, when that happens with decks, that your very last resource is the thing that gets you over the line. You had nothing left behind. You needed absolutely everything at your disposal. One mistake and you wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
When that happens, that shows you that actually the deck really isn't forgiving, right? There's a very low margin for error.
Yeah.
Really low margin for error and a really low margin for bricking out as well. Anything like that. So I have also experienced the same phenomenon where I've tried to play it. Every time I try to play it, my docks, I have like 4 docks in my hand, and I just think, what is this terrible card? This is the worst thing ever. My opponents never have a dock in their hand, actually. It only ever comes off the top of their deck when their hand's empty, and immediately draws the second one. So it's this, you always see your opponent do the very best thing with it, and then you can't recreate that yourself. I agree with your perspective. I think the way I mulligan is so built into me by playing very consistent decks that I'm just going back to old habits, and I need to actually learn how to mulligan differently with these decks. But even though it's really linear, there is a low margin for error. You will need a lot. You will need a lot of reps with it. It's not something you can just pick up and hope to smash everyone. And I think that what we were talking about before with what you're practiced with versus jumping to something new when you're looking around at lists and trying to find something you think has the potential to win. There is a tendency to believe that more aggressive decks are easier to jump to because you just turn your stuff sideways. I think that sometimes that's true, but actually, these aggressive Amber Steel decks have a reasonably low margin for error, and you could at least practice them. Try and get at least 100 games in if you're going to play in a big tournament. You gotta get some good reps.
Yeah, and I have a large section in my guide about this topic, about the skill in aggro decks topic, because I also agree it's not. I mentioned some lines like, if you play 2 1-drops or 1 2-drop on turn 2, that's completely different and changes the whole game. Where many other control decks doesn't have many decisions in the early game, so you either go for, I make the more hand economy better play, or I play the more aggressive play, and you need to know on turn 2 which way is better now. That's very, very skillful, I think. And Decandio probably is one of the who mastered this the most. So you have to look 3 turns ahead for when you're deciding this, probably, because I mean, you can't always, but it's hard to say which way is better. One is more aggressive, but you lose more cards and have less cards on turn 4 or something. But the other way is a bit slower, but you have more cards in your hand. Does that help you if you have more cards in your hand, or are you just too slow then? So there are many decisions that that I know not simple. I think in aggro decks,
Yeah. Every deck is, I know we're specifically talking about Amber Steel right now, but every deck has a very high expression of skill in this game at the moment, in my opinion, because the mulligans are so important. Your inking decisions are so incredibly important, as they always have been, and actually the decisions outside of that of, am I turning sideways or am I questing? Yes, they're also important and skill intensive, but in some ways they're not quite as important as the ones you've just described, right? Which is knowing, having to understand the impact that the decisions you have, i.e. what I play versus what I ink, will have on the fabric of the game moving forward, and then how you adjust your thinking around that. I think the whole game is so such a high expression of skill across the board, and actually that's one of the reasons why we feel things like the play draw disparity so much, because at a high level tournament at the moment you have a room full of people who, as we discussed, mostly have like a player identity, right? They've decided the archetype that they're going to focus on. They've become practiced experts in this archetype. They're then playing that deck with an incredibly forgiving mulligan rule in this game that ensures smooth consistency for almost everything. And it feels like play draw is wildly disparate, only because in a lot of games that's the only meaningful point of variance that actually happens, right? The dice roll is this only point. You're in a flat meta game, everyone's an expert in their deck, and the mulligan ensures high consistency for the runouts of most decks. What variance is there? I really don't. They're like, there isn't any really, other than the dice roll. So I don't know what there is to take from that, but like, there is huge skill expression in everything, and the practiced player will be rewarded in every case. But it feels more like you're just waiting. These games are waiting for your opponent to make like one tiny misstep, and it's these small. They feel like minute decisions, and they become really important. And they throw the whole game out.
In the Continentals, I was also. I'm not that confident that I could be. Sometimes I think, but I also thought I will get punished by every mistake. I was more focused about not doing any misplay than thinking about, oh, I will punish this misplay. I think you're really good if you do not do any misplay. You're good enough, I think, for the most part. Yeah. So red purple. What do we say? Red purple. It's a bad deck, right? You say?
I say it's very, very good. I say I'm sorry for saying that green purple has such a good matchup into it, because my opinion has changed massively. I think that red purple, as it has demonstrated, has the potential to win any tournament at any level, and a well-practiced red purple player is among the scariest things you can face in this game, regardless of what you're playing. You can never count this deck out. I don't believe it will ever die. Rumors of its death are continuously exaggerated. You will face this at every tournament, one round at least.
You have to think about it. Yeah.
And the best red purple player in the room is probably top 8ing any tournament, right? The top 8 is not going to be 8 red purple, but it could be 3. And if there's one in there, there's a fair chance they win the tournament, right?
Yeah. And it showed it's won again, you know. And the thing is, the red purple has this weird spot in everyone knows it's good, but nobody really cares about to tech against it, you know. So nobody thinks, oh, this Flynn, how do we deal with Flynn? How do we deal with Flynn? I don't know. But against Diablo or something, everybody thinks, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with the Daisy? But the Flynn is just, he's just there, and sometimes win you a game on turn 2. But yeah, but we shouldn't care too much, because it's so Red Purple has a good spot always, because it's not targeted by anyone too much. At least not too much, because everybody thinks about more how do we beat Red Blue, then how do we beat Red Purple, because Red Purple is a weird deck. It has no real crazy good things, but it has no really crazy bad things, you know. So there's nothing to target for. Because Red Blue, if you can come around the big Sisu, you win, and there's nothing you can do like that against Red Purple. Sometimes they struggle, of course, against really aggressive things going on, but it's still winnable. But they need the right cards at the right time, and sometimes they just lose to Akko, but I think that's fair. Yeah.
It's like I was joking with you the other day. I said that, half joking, half there's some truth to it. I said, like, I think one of the cleanest measures of a player's skill and knowledge in this game is to simply ask them what they think of the 3-cost Inkable Sisu, right?
Yeah.
Which is that this card is absurdly powerful, like really, really good. It's pretty much like a 3-cost 5/4 that quests for 2 and is inkable, and like is frequently like this 2-card combo with Flynn Rider, and universally, like, nobody cares.
Yeah, right? nobody cares. Yeah, it's just a good deadline. Yeah.
People complain about every card. Like, everybody has pet cards they hate. People complain about Diablo, about Hiram. People complain about Go-Go. People complain about Goat. Nobody complains about Sisu. There's some quality that
Why should
Sisu
you?
has.
It's just a 6/4 for 3. What do you need?
It's just a 3-cost 6/4 that quests for 2. It's just like the absolute best thing you can play on turn 3 in the dark in the game. And then so you ask someone, they realize, okay, yeah, it's the best 3-drop. Yeah, it's just wildly outstats everything. Doesn't really die to anything in that realm.
So it's good, yeah.
Stays. Yeah. So you play stuff to counter that, right? No. Nothing. No, just let it happen. Just tell the truth. There isn't anything that counters it. I don't know what I could play. And they're like, oh, okay, so that's a big problem for the balance of the game. Yeah. No. It just sort of exists. And that's like...
I lost some games against Red Purple where they just stall with Sisu the whole game until they beat prep, and then I lost at this spot. So weird. The card is... I think there are two cards, but I think I want to talk about it later. I have a short game with you in the end.
Okay, nice.
Like you last time with me.
Nice! I'm excited.
Yeah. So, but now people are still asking themselves, what are they saying? When do they say green purple? And I think it's time now for green purple. Then green purple is still a good deck. Don't get us wrong. And it's completely viable even in DLC environment. It's probably one of the best decks against red blue, probably. I think if you are a red blue player, what decks do you not want to face? It's probably green purple or red purple. I don't know. Probably any purple deck. Oh, what is the worst matchup for red? Yeah, I think it's green purple probably, or red blue. How busted is red blue? If the best matchups are still decent, then
exactly.
But green purple is probably the most problematic cards for them. With Gogo and such cards, but green purple, I think it's good into red blue and into red purple, so I think it's always viable probably, and I think we are slightly ahead into both just because of, I think we have a better chance to win on the draw than them probably. I think in total in just a big amount of games, I think we have a higher win rate than the lose rate. And just because we are better on the play than them, I think we can steal more games on the draw than they can do. So I think we're slightly ahead. Amber Steel is a weird matchup. We have some tough ones like the new Amethyst Steel and green steel, the new green steel with sand, what sand plays. That's a nightmare. Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do against this deck. But I honestly think that deck struggles a lot against some other decks. So I hope it's not too popular.
Green purple, No, I was just going to say, like you say there about green steel. Green purple has bad matchups, but it's bad matchups. One of the most frustrating experiences you can have is that green purple's bad matchups struggle to convert against some of the most popular decks like blue red, right? So these it can feel like you're losing to stuff that's only there to beat you, and they've turned you turn up and you get crushed by a purple steel aggressive build that isn't fast enough to beat a lot of the control decks, but uniquely lines up well to crush you, and you think, okay, you did your job, you made sure that I got pushed down in the standings, so nobody is going to beat blue red, and congratulations, prophecy fulfilled, blue red and red purple just win this tournament, they win everything, because everything that could potentially have good matchups into them, you're policing out of the format. So that's a uniquely frustrating experience. But these decks, they are still quite good in their own right, but I think you have to be careful with green purple that it does have good matchups into a lot of the top decks. But if you just look at that top 8 we were looking at, the tournament in Florida, it's actually quite a hostile environment, right, for green purple, which is that on paper you think I can beat the best stuff. Well, actually the best stuff doesn't always rise to the top. and it's more of a case of like, can you beat everything?
Yeah, that's
Not
true.
always true for this deck. Yeah, but it
That's
isn't true for
true.
any deck. So it's like,
Yeah, it's maybe true for red purple a bit, but yeah, it's not. Red purple is probably still the deck that is 50-50 into everything, but yeah, it's this top 8 is at least a tough thing for green purple because much 2 purple steals. Blurple is a bad matchup for green purple. Yeah, I think Blurple is only holding back by Ember Steel. I think if Ember Steel wouldn't exist, then Blurple would be a really good deck. But so
I think a lot of
yeah,
people will opt to play things like Blurple in there when set championship season comes around. Very viable deck for that, especially if you think you're just gonna face like a purple field.
I would just be too afraid of too much Ember Steel, probably personally.
Yeah.
But yeah.
If you're a player that can accept one really terrible matchup, then there are green purple and Blurple probably both quite appealing to you.
Is there any other deck? Green Steel is probably still a deck that is. It's a weird spot again. I think it's a worse spot than it was. Still think, for me personally, Amber Steel, Red Blue, and Red Purple are probably, if you want to say S tier or something, and then Green Purple is nearly there. Green Purple and Green Steel are nearly there, and then comes some other decks, I think. Or how would you see it?
Yeah, I think I see it just about the same way. I think I agree that Green Steel it's not where it has been in the past. Certainly those, like Diablos are easier answered now, and that's a big part of the deck used to get so much advantage through the early shifted Diablo before you could catch up with it, that then they were fine to just play things like beasts, that sort of thing, or just jam those down the line. Now, like, I don't know, it just doesn't close the games like it used to, right? Which is that I think you have to be quite a different build, like something a little more aggressive, something that's capable of going faster. The mid-rangey type things just don't quite do it like they used to, or you have to be a lot more in on the discard, play things like Lucifers, that sort of thing. I think it's a totally viable deck, but I'm not as afraid of it as I used to be.
I think it's problematic for the deck to build it, like to beat everything. Yeah, that's true. I think it's very hard to build the deck in a way that it has a good matchup into everything. Very tough,
for sure.
Very tough to do that.
Yeah.
So that's our conclusion, I think. Either of those decks still, I think Red Blue, Red Purple, Amber Steel, Green Purple, Green Steel are all totally viable decks if you're experienced with it. And even Purple Steel, I think it's a viable deck. And
Purple Steel and Blurple, I think, also perfectly viable decks. They, like we just said, they have some more polarized matchups, but for some people are fine accepting that. And they're like the sorts of things that if you have a really clear read on the room, sometimes they can be absolutely the right call. But outside of that, don't necessarily have all the tools they need to beat the whole format.
Yeah.
So wide open again.
Yeah, it's a really cool meta game, you could say. There are things that are annoying, but always think about if the opponent doesn't play annoying things, then the meta is probably not in a good spot, because only one deck is busted, So you have to have some cards that can counter you, so otherwise the meta wouldn't be interesting in a vacuum.
That's a very healthy way to think about things. The more annoyed you are at what your opponent's doing, the better the game is.
I mean, sometimes you just have to be. I also think about the same when I look at people when they. I think it's hard. It's very rude for me to saying it, but the worst players are people that complain immediately after they lost how lucky the opponent was. That's most of the time a bad sign for me, because that won't help anyone. If you complain about your opponent being lucky, you should always think about what could I have done to be able to win that. But sometimes it's reasonable to be just a bit tilted from one spot, because it's we are human, and yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have
And
to be mad
sometimes,
that to have an excuse for yourself. So you don't always have to think, oh, I'm bad. You're not bad, but sometimes it's better to. Often it's objectively better to think about what you can have done better than thinking about your opponent was lucky. And that's yeah.
yeah,
Oh.
especially if you're a red-blue player, right? I just want to say, if you play red-blue and after the game, let's say I beat you with green-purple, and the first thing you say is, "Oh, didn't draw Hiram." Right. I don't want to hear it, right? I don't want to hear that you didn't draw Hiram. That's the one failure mode for your deck, right? One thing can go wrong for you. Didn't draw Hiram. It's the only card that doesn't have immediate redundancy and is like a really important engine for your deck that you absolutely need to succeed. You see so many cards. Sometimes you won't draw Hiram, right? Like that sucks. But like when that happens, it's like one of the only things that goes wrong possible in these super consistent lists that just see a bunch of cards, draw a bunch of cards. That's the only time it tilts me is when somebody complains to me that they didn't draw their Hiram, and I go, "Yeah, no, you didn't. It was really good for me. Bye."
So true. Yeah, that's exactly the thing you say. Exactly. And if you see a total games of 100 games, then you draw 5 games no Hiram. That's just the fact.
Yeah, right. Yep.
But we can't be that objectively all the time. That's clear. And if it's in the wrong game, if it's in an important game, then of course we are tilted. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I have a game now for you. I want to make you a little list in the end now of the year of the 5 best cards printed in 2024.
Ooh.
So that's no set 1 and no set 2.
No
So
set 2. Okay, right. That's
no
important.
Hiram, no Rabbit.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know if you have it in mind or something, or you need to think about it a bit. Or I can start with my 5th place, and you can think about in the meanwhile, or we just make a short break and you make the list.
Do you have them in order? Right. So
I have it in order.
right?
I have it in order.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go for it. No breaks.
Okay.
I want to do this.
Okay.
I want to do this live. I think
yeah,
I can.
because I wanted your spontaneous opinion. That's why I don't want to make a break right now. Didn't want to make a break initially.
Yeah, cool.
So my 5th place is Genie. Because honestly, there are many cards that are set 1 or 2 are very powerful sets, and there are some cards we're not. And I think Genie is just in a vacuum. I always think about cards that for some it doesn't make much sense to make such a list, but it's a fun thing. And in a card like Genie, it's hard to imagine to not play at least 3 times in any purple deck. So Genie must be in this list for me. What can we say about Genie? It's overstated.
Yeah.
It's overstated. I don't want to say it's a misprint, but it's overstated. It does too much for its cost. And that's a reason to play it. And yeah, you could maybe put 1 willpower off him. Probably not, but maybe you could put 1 willpower off him and still be played or something. I don't know, but it's just too much for the cost, and there's nothing special in it. The higher from now on, I get salty. The higher the 4-1 spot, I get very salty because I think it's a misprint, and Ravensburger managed this. No, but Genie is the with by far the most fair card in this list for me.
Yeah, it's one of those cards that it would certainly be in my list. I'm not sure exactly where, but it probably would. I know this is you put me on the spot, and I'm going to immediately go, yeah, I think the exact same thing as you, which is a cop out. But I think it can't be that high because it's not hugely game warping, but it's never bad, right? Yeah. It's one of those cards that's always fine, like you say, overstated, way above rate. So it's got to be there. we can't put Rabbit on this list because it was a set 2 card, but Genie has to be there, and for me, it's going to be in this spot as well. So I would put it exactly where you are, because I think there are 4 cards that I hate a lot more also, and I'm actually
nice.
just for the purposes of not copying, as you explain
Yeah,
your
yeah,
number
yeah.
4, I'm going to write mine down, and then I'm going to stick to my list so that I don't just default to everything.
Nice.
Cool.
Do you want to make the next, or shall I?
Yeah, I will go ahead right away, and I think that my number 4 will be. It's really hard because we're reflecting on the whole year, right? So this is we're looking back over the whole year. So set 3, I think that you have to put the 3-cost Ursula in here. Like it had such a.
I don't
it
have
had
it
such...
in. I don't have it in, but it makes
Okay.
sense. It makes sense. Okay, it's totally.
Yeah.
I thought about her, and yeah, it was close. I think it's my sixth place. The 3-cost Ursula for me.
So this is a card I do like. Not one that tilts me. It does tilt me when my opponents play it.
Yeah.
These days it looks way less powerful than it did because well, we got Brawl. It was a big point against it.
It's good, like I said, because in a vacuum, that's true. In a vacuum, she's very, very strong. Yeah.
And it's not gonna. Well, we're at least not at the point where it could realistically disappear. This is something that has an ongoing effect on the game, in the sense of there's a limit to how good you can make 3-cost songs because this card exists, right? Like every time, if you, for example, printed an inkable Mother Knows Best tomorrow, this card would see a play again in a lot more decks, and there's a limit to what you can do. But it had like an iron grip on the game around set 3. It was doing great things for green steel and green purple. It's still massively powerful. It's still a massive game swinger in the green steel decks. It was a massive player in the green yellow decks that existed for quite a while. Really powerful in a vacuum card that I think.
It's a weird situation
on my list for that reason.
It's a weird situation for it because green has probably the worst songs at all. Not the worst. Sudden Chill, but Sudden Chill is not a good card. It's just there are no really good songs. Maybe Amber is still worse, but there's not much that comes into mind when you play green with her. So you have to pair it with something that has better songs to make her shine. It would be my 6th place probably. So I have 4 cards that are higher. Shall I tell you my 4th place?
Go for your 4th place.
It's Big Sisu for me. Maybe you have her higher. Because I think maybe you could see her higher, but if I'm totally honest, maybe she's good for the health of the game, as she is probably needed a bit to hold back aggro a bit and make control decks viable, or red blue viable, you could say, because red blue would be auto. You can imagine they have only B prep. They can't win against green purple. It's nearly 100% win rate, I think. So she is probably needed, but she's too strong. She does too much as well. I think you should take away from a 1 lore bib from her, and she would be a more fair card for me. But she is too good. And I got punished because when the set was released, I remember it. I thought, okay, this is bad. And I initially when this card got revealed, I thought, nah, I don't know. 2 or less, it's very, very, very much to ask, and I don't know. And then everyone crushed me with her, and I got punished.
Yeah, I mean, I do have it higher on my list, and shall I say where it is now? It's on my list.
Yeah, okay, then say it now.
I have it at number 1 because I think that because it's fresh in my memory, because it's current, like it's like at its peak right now, which is that it's been good and it still is as good as it's ever been. It has like metagame. It's a metagame warping card at the moment. It defines what you can and can't play.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable.
And so it's really, really high for me. For all the reasons you've said and more, I think it's
For me, the cards
overstated.
above her. No, 2 of the 3 cards above her are nonsense for me. They're nonsense too strong, and
Okay, right.
she is too strong, but with a bit of a reason. But the cards above her for me are 2 of the 3 cards above her are nonsense, and it makes no sense for me. But yeah, we come to that soon. So, what's your 4th place?
We did my 4th place. It was the 3-cost Ursula, but I could do my 3rd place.
Oh no! Oh, sorry. Yeah, fifth place was also Genie, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 4th place was and 3rd place.
Yeah. So we're live editing now. I've just edited my list because there's a card that I thought was in set 2, but it was in set 3. Which is the 2-cost Ursula, right? Ursula Deceiver.
Yeah. She's my 2nd place.
I've got that at number 3. It's more of like a check and balance that the game needed.
Yeah.
There's a moment that I can point to on Twitter that I feel so validated by this. This was during set 2. During set 2 and set 1, we were getting just smashed by whole new worlds that we couldn't stop. Prepared that we had absolutely no way of interacting with. These things were completely inevitable in every game, and it's like unthinkable now. It's unthinkable that we just had to sit there and there was no way of interacting with them in the hand. And there was a tweet I made months ago, right at the start of the year, or maybe even in set 2, where I said, like, look, for the health of this game, it needs a duress effect, which is a card in Magic which has the Ursula effect. Yeah. And some people said, this card's horrible. What do you want that in the game for? And I'm like, to make it playable. If the game would be playable to a basic level, it'd be bearable to play. And and people didn't necessarily agree. But time has shown us that actually this is, when it's paired with things like Prince John, that sort of thing, and you start to get extra value from discarding, it can feel oppressive. But it's a really important check and balance for the game that, look, if we are going to have these actions that can be played for free in the form of songs and have like a 0-cost game warping effect, there must be some check and balance in play to make sure that is something to mitigate the raw power of that, right? It can't just be inevitable. Something must have the ability to stop it. Now we've got Pete as well, which is also a consideration for the list for the same reason. But it's a really important card that I've spent the whole year playing with for the most part, and does its job really well. Really hard to say it's not one of the most relevant cards in the metagame, and has been for the whole year.
It's another card that is in every green deck, probably 4 of, so hard to imagine to not run this card. But I think it's one of the best designed cards because it's just a very good card. That's not unfair. I think nobody thinks it's totally unfair. It's very good, but I think not many people think it's very unfair. So the game needs it, and that's where I think probably a good design card. And as you said, it's needed. It was needed for the game very much at this spot because it was a nightmare. This whole new world, you could never never hold back, and no. So I think that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have. So that was my 2nd place and your 3rd place. So my 3rd place is the Hensai Sisu. Just because of it makes no sense. And that's kind of it makes no sense. I mean, you can compare this card, for example. There's a 3-cost. I talked with you about it. I think there's a 3-cost Moana in this game that is uninkable and is decent. This is a playable card. It's a playable card. It's not completely unplayable. And 3/4 quest for 2 is a really good stat line. And this is so absurdly better. It's just the inkability is a big point for that, and it's most of the time more than 3 strength, and it's super busted. It's good into any matchup in this game. There is no matchup where you think I mean, sometimes you ink it because you need something else more, but I could never imagine. It's good against red blue because it quests for 2. It's good against any board control early. It's so the problem is just this is stupidly overstated, and my first place is the same, and the first place is not even worse, I think. But this is also stupidly overstated, and yeah, I think you can't look more for an overpowered card. I think overpowered doesn't mean necessarily that it's bad for the game, but overpowered makes no sense, you know. For example, in Yu-Gi-Oh, there was a card named Pot of Greed that just says draw 2 cards. Everybody complained about it, but it's not game breaking in itself. It just makes no sense that this card exists, you know, and that's the same for Sisu for me. Probably it makes sense because it helps red purple to be viable, but yeah, it's just too strong for her effect.
Yeah, I didn't put it on my list. But I think I was wrong to, especially after I said earlier that I think one of the greatest measures of someone's skill is what they think of this card. I'm now outing myself as a fool.
Yeah, I try to do it in a vacuum, you know. So I think about cards that doesn't need any. For example, the other Sisu, the 3-cost Sisu, is a very linear. It's a very linear meta game where she shines, but this is just. Can never be bad.
Yeah, super high power, like you say, overpowered, but not in a sense that's game breaking. In a sense that it just is like slightly more powerful than it should be. The power level is over what it should be at.
Yeah. So, and your second place we didn't talk about, right?
So you know my number 1, which is the Big Sisu.
Yeah.
But my second place is Diablo, as you might.
Oh, really? I don't
expect.
have it on my list. No.
Really?
No.
You don't have Shift Diablo in your list of top 5.
No.
This card had the whole game in like an iron grip for like at least 4 or 5 months.
Do you play it in every green deck? No, only in one.
Yeah, but that one was like almost a 1-deck format that it was in.
No, by far not.
Oh, come on. That Bucky deck. That Bucky deck was so far above everything else.
The Bucky deck won only 1 DLC, the others won red purple in a Bucky meta. So okay. Let's before we
to me the power level of this is like, this is one of those cards that enables basically any player to win games. More so than any other card in this game. It's like the opposite of a skill check. It's one of those things that is like, for you, it puts the onus on the opponent to have specific answers. Now we're in a position where we've got them, right? But this is so powerful in a vacuum where if you don't have this specific answer, the game is basically over. That's how it was.
But you have to consider that you have to play bad cards in your deck, and you have to play cards in your deck that do nothing, like the 1-drop Diablo. Yeah, I mean, you could say you can see a hand, and you said it yourself once in a podcast that if you've played Diablo yourself, you don't think it's busted. It was busted with Bucky. I agree. Yeah. But if you play Diablo yourself, you don't think it's busted, especially if you play against Steel. I think you're really unhappy to have this in your deck against any Steel deck because they just storm it. And
what's happened to you? You used to be a real person with real feelings on Diablo. You used to hate this card, and you've started to buy their propaganda. The Diablo player propaganda.
They still have no honor.
Answers.
Do you have Prince John on the list? I don't say Diablo players.
He's set 2.
Oh, true. Yeah. Would he be? Be honest? I don't think so.
No, he wouldn't. No.
And Diablo, I don't say people that play Diablo have honor or dignity or something. That's still not true. But but
I just have to say, I spent so much of this year thinking about Diablo in and out of games, and the amount of space that a card takes up in my head is relative to it's like speaks to its power level. I don't want to go into games thinking if my opponent opens Diablo Shift Diablo, I don't have answers for this. I can't do it. Like this, the Diablo believers always said the same things. Oh, there are really simple answers. Just fire the cannons. Oh, just
yeah.
Triton's decree it. They'd say the same things every time. There are so many answers. Look at them, and proceed to send you a list of the like 10 worst cards ever printed, and be like, just play these awful dog shit bricks, and then you can kill Diablo. It's like it's that easy. All you have to do is make every other matchup noticeably worse, and you can answer Diablo. I'm like, cool, thanks, mate. I'll just definitely do that. I just think that the card was so dominant for so long. There's no way that it's not on my list.
Okay.
It lived rent free in my head and still does. Like I'm still afraid of this card.
That makes it not the best card. That makes it not
fine.
Okay, let's before we hate ourselves. If we I did this list very spontaneous like you. I did it 5 minutes before the podcast started, and I looked up on Diablo and thought, so weird when I say not completely broken, but and the problem is, do you want to have a Diablo in your deck and an inkable card that does nothing into any steel deck right now?
Not right now, no, but like set 3, set 4, and even a little bit set 5, yes. I would have had it, yeah.
I probably should have picked it there, but it's controversial for me. It's controversial.
I will say I do see your points. Your points are reasonable.
But my first place is just stupid, because it makes no sense. And Diablo is not like Sisu. It makes no sense. And this is okay. You have to play the answers, but it costs.
This is going to be good.
This is gonna be cool. And you have to play the answers, but it's still a 2/2 for 3. If you play against Akku, it does nothing. It's yeah. You have to have the shift, or both cards are probably bullshit. Imagine hardcasting a Diablo right now. What does this against what deck is this good? Tell me. Tell me,
I don't know. No, it's not good against any deck, is it? Okay, you got me. It's bad.
No, it's not bad. That's not what I want to say. Artabax said it's bad in the podcast. I don't say it's bad.
I just want to remind you that green steel decks were putting 8 ink cost worth of like mixed action. They were spending 8 ink on turn 2, right?
Yeah.
They had their 2 to spend. They shifted their deal. These cards were not as bad as you think they were. How many DLCs did Green Steel win this year in America?
1, I think. 1 or 2. No, it's Wonderland, and it's okay, it's Sand, and it's the red. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's the red, and then one of the other ones was Level played Diablo Green Yellow, and won.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing. How many DLCs has something got to win before you admit it's powerful?
I put it in. I put the Genie out and put Diablo in. Are you happy now?
No, I'll never be happy.
Okay, do you want to hear my...
I do. I really want to hear it. I got a real feeling that it's going to be the most fair card ever.
No. Have you an idea what it is?
I honestly don't. I should know, but I really don't know where you've gone with this.
Oh man, I'm afraid now because you say it's a fair card.
Yeah, no, I don't know though.
It's one of the cards. It's one of the cards like Sisu that everybody thinks, oh yeah, it's fine. But it's actually broken as fuck. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And it's Mr. Smee, 2-drop Mr. Smee.
Okay.
Because that makes no sense. Why does it have that? That's so much printed on this card that makes no sense. It is the problem is it's the best aggro 2-drop you can play. But the thing is, on the opposite, it's the best defensive 2-drop you can play as well. So that makes no sense to me. That's the first and only card I ever read in a reveal that I thought, what so 2 cost 3/3 was never printed before, and why does it have 2 lore as well? So it makes 2 cost 3/3 is so busted, like Snake or something, and this has 2 lore as well. The decks that Smee is in would work way less if Smee wouldn't exist, and it's even more than Sisu for me, the overpoweredness of Smee. It's too good. It's really too good, and
it's one of those cards as well that just randomly gets better in a world where Sisu exists, right? Where it's like, okay, this thing is overstatted, but the extra stats it has are like make it that they're even better than they appear. Like, for example, that final point of strength, the one that takes it from 2 to 3, is an absolute world away, right? It doesn't need much to make a 2-cost card way overpowered, and I do agree. It's like it's one of the most powerful cards for sure. The thing is,
how Lorcana is designed is that the aggressive cards have low stats. That's the design of Lorcana, like the Pinocchio or something. It's okay. It's 3 lore, but the cost of this card is to have a 1/1 that does nothing. And in Smee, you have the best aggressive card. And if you speak with someone and someone says, I need some defensive card on turn 2, what do you suggest me? You also say Smee, because how stupid is that? How stupid is that? You have the best aggressive character that's also the best defensive character. The downside is stupid. You can even either with Cogsworth totally denied, or you can Rapunzel it still. That then makes it an upside. So it's really, really stupid. And all steel aggressive decks that existed since set 3, Smee makes a big part of that. They are viable.
Yeah, I think.
And again,
right.
I just want to say again, if you're a card designer from Ravensburger, you have like your guys that they have ideas for cards, and you say, "Oh, come, we need some 2-drops. Mr. Smee got no good cards yet," and they we make a 3/3 quest for 2, and you look at this and think, "Oh, okay, we print this." And I think why?
I thought just then you were going to say, if you're a card designer from Ravensburger, I just want to say, I don't think this is a big mistake, and I appreciate all of the hard work you're doing. And instead you just said, I think this is a mistake that nobody should ever be able to make. I will never understand why you've done it.
No, I don't want Ravensburger if you hear this. I love you. You made a great game. But you maybe in a world you did a mistake here, because Mr. Smee was a card like, and honestly, if you answer honestly now, if you look at when Diablo got revealed, I know we were in the podcast with I think it was Seth and someone, and we talked about Diablo, and we also. Dies to every storm to every steel removal, and it's very slow, and I don't know. I mean, we got convinced that it's not, but this one, nobody in this world thought. I think I don't know, not good. Takes 1 damage after it's exerted. That's
very reasonable. I see your point. Look. Diablo splits opinion, and maybe there is something to take from that. Like, nobody is out here defending Mr. Smee, are they? But like, nobody's saying Smee is just like fine. He is. Everyone universally agrees this card is overstated.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it's
Blue
about
Steel.
what effect does it have on the game?
Primer set this once to me. Blue Steel into Red Blue on set 4 or 5 or something was only playable because of Smee, because it gets you 6 lore, and for no reason. So yeah, I'm honestly thinking Smee is, and you can, even if you have a captain, you can deny the damage. It makes no sense. So it wouldn't be good enough. Let's say if a captain is in play, he doesn't take the damage. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think your perspective is very valid. I see your point, but I still think just vote with pure emotion. Just
Yeah,
go
and
for what you hate.
I think yours is even more accurate probably, because I just rate Diablo too low. But the fear we have doesn't necessarily mean it's powerful. I mean, it's dumb to say that probably, but I don't know.
No, I think it's fair to say that, because the fear is not necessarily like the fear is partially biased, right? Like there are some cards that we're universally afraid of, but then like my care about Diablo is way higher than yours, and really way higher than like anybody else I've met, which tells me it's probably not completely rational. There was when people were calling for a Diablo ban, there was a little trend a few months ago on Twitter. People were very widely debating, should Diablo be banned? And player in America, Ryan Miles, made some very, very coherent points for it. And I DM'd Ryan, and had to send him a message where it's like, like if you walked around and you were seeing ghosts every day and everyone agreed that there were no ghosts, and then one day a guy stood up and went, "There are ghosts everywhere," you would go, oh my god, I feel so seen. You're the only person seeing these ghosts. You're so intelligent and your points are so good. But even then, I do like, while some people do seem to share my view on it, it is biased, and so it's probably not something you could apply blanket to everything. Like, my faults aren't as strong, so it's probably, if the community doesn't universally agree that this is a bad thing, probably not a bad thing. I just think it's bad.
I think you can separate these two topics for me, because it can still be that the card is so unfun to play against, or it's such a bad game experience that games end on turn 2, that it's still viable to ban it, even though it's not stronger than, I don't know, Big Sisu or something in a vacuum. But and that's the fact for Bucky was as well. Even if you don't come to a conclusion, but it was probably, even if you wouldn't come to the conclusion that it's overpowered, then it's still, nobody has fun anymore in this game, and there are no way. It's always feels bad to have a card that has no good answers. And Diablo is, I agree, there are not that many good answers for it. So yeah.
No. And when you play it, you feel like it gets answered very often, because you only remember when it goes badly for you, and when you play against it, you only remember the games where you didn't answer it. So yeah, it's just really swingy with the biases. But I think your list is really solid. Actually, in terms of power level, I think it's really, really good. And yeah, it helps us reflect as well on some of these things, that like these cards that are just overstated staples.
And it's cool that we talk about it, because Smee made me way more aggressive than Diablo in the history of Lorcana.
Really?
Yeah. I hate this card so much. I hate it so much. And I'm really always aggressive when they play as me. Because I
wonder why I don't hate it. Because I hate nearly everything.
What's that? They don't have any cost of playing this shit card, like a snake or something, or where you have to bounce something, or they just can slam Smees, and it's always overpowered and always does more than it costs.
That's really interesting. That is a difference. That is a difference in our mindset. You get angry at there being no cost for this, like they're doing something that's always good, and the things that make me angry are when they do something that's situationally good, where I'm like, this thing is only good in this scenario, how dare you do that against me when it's good right now? Like, why are you doing this thing that isn't always good, and specifically beats me? So that's it's a difference in mindset. That's interesting. I think both are valid to get
both
angry
are
at,
valid.
but
Both are valid. Yeah, and Smee is just for me a painful card, and I knew Blue Steel was a good matchup, and then they printed Smee, and I thought, how can you open with Captain Hook and Smee and don't be ashamed of yourself's existence?
Yeah.
Because what is this? And I play a Flynn Rider. And compare Flynn Rider to Smee, it's just stupid.
Yeah.
But I think we have a long we were afraid of not being too long.
Yeah, we
long
thought we
enough
had nothing
today.
to talk about.
Yeah, but then we talked about it much. Okay. I want to wish you all a very good new year. You say it like that, right? I wish you a good new year, although it's not new year. That would make no sense in Germany, but I wish you a good new year. And thanks for being on the journey with us. And I want to personally say thank you to all of because I had so much support on my Metafy right now. I didn't expect that. Want to say thanks to everyone who supports me and everyone who supports us in the podcast, because we really like to do it. And want to go on the journey with you. Have a good one. And just make a good celebration or something what you would like to do on the Sylvester evening. Yeah. And you? Do you have anything to add?
No, just the same. Yeah, thanks again to everyone. Really hope that everyone had a nice Christmas and do have a great New Year. It's, again, we've said this many times and we seem to come back to it every episode.
Yeah.
2024 was a fantastic year. Much more than either of us could have imagined. And I really hope for the people listening that you're excited to kind of go into 25 with us and continue to follow us on this sort of podcast journey, and looking forward to meeting many more of you and seeing where things go next year. It's been a good one, but we can do better. So we will.
Nice. So have a good one, everyone, and bye-bye from us until next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.